what's really interesting is that as humans, when people do things to us that we think aren't right, we believe they shouldn't treat us that way, we
Yeah.
get really angry. And it's because our thoughts are, he shouldn't treat me like that. He shouldn't yell at me. Like, how dare he? Those thoughts create the anger. And so what I share with my clients is like, look, you can be angry all you want, and
Mm.
you can own that you don't like to be treated that way. But
Yeah.
the only question you have to answer is, how do you want to show up in responding to being treated that way? Because my guess is, however you want to show up, it's not going to be driven by anger. It's
Yeah.
probably going to be driven by a different emotion. And so you have to take your moment, be angry, right? Be righteously mad. Let that move through you. It's a part of life, it's part of your yin and yang.
Yeah.
But know that when you want to have that conversation, it's going to need to be driven by a different emotion. And maybe that's curiosity. Like, I really wonder what's going on with him and why he would talk to me like that. That's going to yield a very different result in your
Yeah.
career, in your relationships, in your life than biting back from anger. And so it's
Yeah.
about also just being mindful of, what space am I operating from, and is that helpful?
Yeah, it's always to find out like what's happening on the other side as well. So
Yeah.
it's not, sometimes it's not personal. Sometimes he had a tough time, like law practice. Probably he went for like working on a client project. It didn't come through like as he wanted,
Hmm.
and yelling at you for not because you haven't did some kind of like a wrong or something. It could be
Yep.
like he had some bad time in the family. Some he had an argument with his spouse or like
Yep.
a partner, then this kind of things they bring into the workplace and then yell at you. So like all the time, like having a conversation with the person to find out actually is there something I did wrong or like you having a bad time. Having a
Yeah.
communication is really solve the problem, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a really important insight, right? And, it's always the solution is to
Yeah,
communicate and be open and be curious. But, it's also important to allow yourself to be angry and just recognize like it's okay for me to be mad, but I'm not going to have a conversation from that place. Because I
yeah,
get a lot of people will say, well, I'm just supposed to be a doormat and let people treat me terribly. It's like that's not the
yeah,
message. The message is, take your anger, process it, own it, reflect on it, but recognize that if you want to be curious and you want to have that conversation, anger is not going to be invited to that discussion. It's just not conducive.
yeah. It's going to make it worse the situation, right?
Totally. And
Yeah,
I think as women and myself, included, early on, people say things, you get sexually harassed, people make
yeah,
innuendos, you get angry and you want to be angry. Like, I don't want to feel good about
yeah,
that stuff. But just recognizing that it was okay to be angry and I could be angry, but then also choose to show up calm and clear. That was kind of mind blowing
yeah,
to me. Perfect. Wonderful.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely like owning our what we talk and finding out doesn't really need to be like losing our self-confidence and self-worth.
Hmm.
We need to have a balance out. And sometimes, like even though having a communication, the problem not going to be solved. Some boss or some manager going to be like a different, and they're never going to be changed. They're going to harass you. They're going to bully
Yes.
you, and they're going to like overpower you all the time. So then, kind of like change need to be doing. So you have to like have a like observation time, think about it, like how's the process is going, and finding out like what you want to do about it. Sometimes
Yeah.
communication not the solution.
Yeah, I love the observation piece of it. And I don't often use that word, but I think it's a good one that I will start implementing because I think what's really interesting about other people is that whenever we're struggling with someone, whether it's a boss or a spouse or whomever, it's almost always rooted in a belief that they're supposed to be acting differently, that I know how they're supposed to be acting, that
Yeah,
I know what they're supposed to be doing. And, none of us like to be controlled or told how we're supposed to act or
yeah.
told what we're supposed to do. But we have all these ideas about what other people are supposed to do and how they're supposed to act. And that causes this great amount of conflict.
Mm,
But instead, if we can just let the people be who they are and just choose what we want to believe about it, it changes the dynamics of our relationships and just assuming that people are going to continue to be who they are.
Yeah.
If you have a boss that's kind of a jerk and he's always yelling at you, it's not helpful to
Yeah.
be angry about that. You feel terrible. He doesn't feel your anger, and he's probably going to continue being who he is and being angry.
Yeah.
It's so much better just to get to a place where it's like, okay, my boss is going to be angry. He's probably going to yell at me. That's what he does. What do I want to believe about that? Instead of sitting here being angry about the person that he is and wishing he would change, because that feels terrible.
Yeah, if it's not a healthy workplace, then obviously need to make some changes, definitely,
Yeah.
because you can't control the other person. How is
Right.
gonna be like, how is gonna treat you, and you can't change him as a person because they're gonna be like that. But yeah, like we mentioned and we talked about how the communication, try to solve it. If it doesn't solve,
Hmm.
then we have to move on and find out like what works best for you as an individual, right?
Yeah, it's about kind of, making that request and setting that boundary. If you have a
Yeah,
boss that yells at you all the time, we get to decide and own that power and just, make a decision whether or not we want to be in a place where it's
yeah,
okay for someone to treat us like that. That's our choice. Or we can say, if you're going to yell at me, I'm going to walk out of the room and I'll
yeah,
come back in an hour, or I'm not going to work with you, right? Like those are the boundaries that we set. It's about what we will do when someone kind of violates our personal space or our comfort
mhm,
level. It's not about trying to convince them to stop yelling. It's not about lecturing them on being somebody better. It's like, okay, well, you get to be you.
yeah,
But if you do that, I'm just gonna walk away. Like I'm not mad at you. We're not gonna fight, but I'm gonna leave and
yeah,
then I'll check in with you later. It brings the whole energy of it down so much.
yeah, absolutely. So to you work with your clients, you work with a lot of women attorneys.
Mhm.
How the process really actually works? So how do you train them on a mindset, change their mindset? Um, can you just walk us through a little bit about like how your program works? So get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, so I have kind of an idea how I would ideally work with a client.
Yeah,
But what I have found is that oftentimes when people come to me, they're kind of pulling their hair out. They're at the end of their rope.